All right, there's so many things happening these days, and it's kind of hard to keep track of everything. But I wanted to share this article with you because I read it last night and I just thought it was absolutely disgusting. It says, even in Russia, they don't treat children like this, a family's nightmare in ICE detention. It says a Russian couple and their children sought asylum in the US in a Texas detention center. They say they've endured worms in the food and hours long waits for medicine. Now, I read this right before I went to bed, and I just immediately felt so bad. I just felt guilty, honest to God, to think about all the privileges that I have on a day-to-day basis that I don't even think about. I don't have to think about worms being in my food. I don't have to think about not receiving the adequate medical treatment or health care if I'm sick or if I have an infection or anything like that. I don't even have to worry about sleeping in a warm bed. These are all things that I have access to on a day-to-day basis, and I don't have to worry about them because I am a privileged American citizen. Some may argue otherwise, but that is the cold, hard truth. That is the reality. So we're going to get into it. But before we do, please comment down below, like and subscribe. Drop a blue heart for me. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate all of you. I'm really trying to build my brand, build my channel, and your support is very much appreciated so we can continue to fight back against this current administration and its atrocities. So let's get into it. So it says Nikita and his wife, Oksana, fled Russia in desperation 2 years ago, believing America was their only hope of giving their three children a life free of fear and oppression. Instead, those children are growing up behind the razor wire fences of a South Texas detention center, among hundreds of other families swept up in President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Over their 4 months at the Diley Immigration Processing Center, a remote prison-like facility that has drawn mounting scrutiny over what human rights advocates describe as inhumane conditions, Nikita and Oksana say their children have endured indignities they'd never imagined possible in the United States. Worms in their food, guards shouting orders and snatching toys from small hands, restless nights under fluorescent lights that never fully go dark, and hours in line for a single pill. Now, does this sound like America to you? When you hear some of these things, what does this sound like? Does this sound like America, the land of the free, land of equal opportunity? Or does it sound like Nazi Germany back in the 1930s? Or Italy under the rule of Mussolini? What does this sound like to you? Worms in their food? Guards shouting orders and taking away children's toys? What the heck is going on? It says, we left one tyranny and came to another kind of tyranny, Nikita said in Russian. Even in Russia, they don't treat children like this. That right there is the most powerful to me, just given the fact that when I think of Russia, I usually think of kind of a brutal country. When I think of Russia, I kind of think of an authoritarian dictatorship. And to know that this is starting to mirror Russia in a way, or maybe even be worse than Russia, that's scary to me. And that should speak for itself when talking about how bad we've really gotten. It says NBC News spoke with the family over Zoom this week and reviewed their lawyer's request for their release, as well as dozens of pages of medical records. For an hour and a half on the video call, Nikita, an engineer, and Oksana, a nurse, two very successful people have in mind, described how their months at Diley have worn down their children, physically, emotionally, and academically. Their two oldest sat behind them in a drab conference room, doodling or staring blankly at the screen. The preschooler wandered the room, swinging a thin plastic rod from a set of window blinds like a toy sword. The couple asked to be identified only by their first names because they fear retaliation if deported back to Russia, where Nikita says he spoke out against President Vladimir Putin's regime. Now imagine this. You're trying to escape authoritarianism, and you come to the United States, only to find out instead you get arrested and thrown into an ICE detention center. I mean, this sounds dystopian, but it's really not. It's literally happening right now. They just even spent their 131st day, and if that sentence doesn't immediately just make your stomach turn, I feel like it should. The article then goes on to talk about their children, talking about they have a 13-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 12-year-old, and they talk about how the 13-year-old once played piano and attended music school, but now he spends most of his days withdrawn, waking at night with anxiety and panic attacks. 4 years old, a sociable boy, is often frightened by loud noises and guards. He once cried for hours after a small toy airplane was confiscated. And Camila, 12, a dancer who loved to perform, now has partial hearing loss in 1 year after what her parents say was a poorly treated infection. For weeks, she counted down the days until her birthday, telling NBC News she only had one wish to get out of here, she said. Now, that just absolutely breaks my heart because, in my opinion, America should be a place where everybody is invited. I mean, I know I'm going to get some criticism on that because people say that no, we shouldn't invite everybody, we should put America first. But I would argue that by inviting more people in who can work and contribute to the local economies, we are putting America first. That is making our country stronger, not weaker. We even see this recently with all the construction shortages in the state of Texas in particular, because so many illegal immigrants who were contributing to those economies and those jobs are now being pushed out of the country, which prompted Congress to introduce this thing called the Essential Workers for Economic Recovery Act, I'm pretty sure, something like that, which basically gives these workers temporary visas so they can work because we need them, and then when we're done, we can send them back. But it offers them up to 9 years to work in the United States because we're realizing that we need these people so badly. Now, I know people love to call them job takers, job stealers. A lot of people will say they're stealing our paychecks and they're stealing our jobs, but that's really not the case. It is definitely true that a lot of the jobs that they're taking, not a lot of people want to work. Not a lot of people want to take these jobs because they're in some cases shitty. They're not paid extremely well all the time, or they just have a low amount of people working in them, so they need to supplement. They need to supplement some of these people. But to get back to the story, it says on Monday the family's attorney, Alora, filed a request for their immediate release on medical grounds. In the letter, their lawyer, a Columbia Law School professor and its director of Immigrants' Rights Clinic, wrote that the children had been detained for more than 120 days, more than 6 times in the 20-day limit set in a federal court agreement governing the detention of minors. She argued that their health has deteriorated as a result. Camila should not be spending her birthday in prison, the lawyer said. She has done nothing wrong. No, I absolutely agree with this statement, and it breaks my heart, like I said, to know that these children who have done absolutely nothing wrong, the parents who have really done absolutely nothing wrong, who want to contribute to the local economies, who want to get a job and work, are stuck in here. Absolutely tragic. It says in a statement, the Department of Homeland Security defended holding the family while their asylum case is pending. It said the Diley facility is retrofitted for families to ensure children's well being and accused the media of peddling hoaxes about poor conditions in immigrant detention centers. Now, this is absolute just horseshit. Obviously, they're just upset that, somebody got an insider look as to what's actually going on, in this case, NBC News. It says the Trump administration is not going to ignore the rule of law or release unvetted illegal aliens into the country, the statement said. All of their claims will be heard by an immigration judge, and they will receive full due process. Now, this is kind of interesting to me because they say they'll receive full due process, yet they're already being stripped of their due process given the fact that they're already being held beyond their limit. Up here, it literally says that they were violating this because the children had been detained for more than 120 days, which is more than 6 times the 20-day limit set in a federal court agreement governing the detention of minors. So, where's the due process if they're already stripped away of their rights? I don't get it. Now, this is the real part that absolutely broke me apart. I mean, it just broke my heart to hear about this. It says on November 16th, a mental health counselor recorded in Camila's medical records that her mother reported the girl had lost her appetite after being served food that contained worms. A week later, the couple said children were told to gather in the gym for what they believed would be a Thanksgiving celebration. Excitement spread as families saw tables set with turkey, sandwiches, pastries, and pies, they said. The children waited expectantly. But when a parent asked when the celebration would begin, Oksana said, staff told them the holiday meal was for employees, not detainees. The children, she said, watched despondently as the feast was packed away. That is just pure, vile evil, in my opinion. Clearly, Clearly, the employees of this facility had no other reason to bring them to the gym other than to publicly humiliate them, to just rub it in their face, to just rub some more salt in the wound, basically, to show them that you are less than. You see all this beautiful food that we have? Well, we're going to eat it right in front of your face, and we're not going to share any of it with you. You think you're worthy of this? Think again. All right, I'm probably going to leave it at there. If you guys like this video, if you like this type of content, please like, subscribe, comment down below, drop a blue heart. I really appreciate your support. You've been great so far, and with your support, I can continue to grow my brand, and we can grow this community of like-minded individuals so we can relentlessly push back against the Trump administration and its current atrocities. I appreciate you all, love you all, and until next time, see you. Bye.